G'day everyone, this is Andrew Price here from BlenderGuru.com, and I'm very excited to present this tutorial to you today because we're going to be getting into architecture. So this is something that a lot of you are very interested in, and for good reason of course, because 3D artists eventually in their career will come across a job such as this one where you have to create an architectural image. So we're going to be using the new rendering engine called Cycles. So this is a very new rendering engine. It's only been out for a few months now. It's the one that's built into Blender. So a lot of people are very curious on how to use it effectively and practically to produce images that are useful. So I thought creating an image like this could be useful to you guys, so you can then venture off and create some really super duper awesome, better images than this one. There's the pressure. Now this image is actually based off a real reference image that I found off the internet, which is this one right here. And I think it's very important that you start with a reference image, at least at first. A lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't copy an image exactly because that's cheating, which is ridiculous really. I mean, artists have been doing it all throughout history. It's called still life. You copy still life. People have been painting bowls of fruit for years. It's to get your skills up to a point where you've learnt so much from copying something that you can then go out and create your own unique works of art using the techniques that you mastered from copying something that looks perfect. Otherwise, you're just always going to be stuck at your own basic level. So it's basically by starting with a reference image. Later on, when we get down the road, you can then get a house plan or floor plan or whatever else that you get from an architecture person, and then you can then go and create your own awesome image from that. So anyway, so this is the reference image right here, and I just want to take a moment also to note that it's really important you find a reference image that looks good before you start, because otherwise, at the best, at the end of once you've finished, it's only ever going to look as good as the reference image does. So this image here I chose because it looks like a professional photographer took it. Looks like the house was designed by an actual designer that knows what they're doing. And it overall, it really works. Like all the textures, they work together. You've got the stone there, you've got the nice dark wood, you've got the granite floor, and the composition of the photo. You've got the door frame here that acts as almost like a natural vignette. You've got beautiful lighting coming in from the side that's capturing the textures on the wall there, and everything, it looks beautiful. So I figured start with an awesome image, and then at the end of it, if you get close to it, then your image is going to look close to awesome as well. So for this tutorial, we're not actually going to be doing any of the modeling. So I've got the starting.blend file here. The reason for that is that modeling is very easy. I mean, this is just basically planes and cubes, and I've just copied the background image right there, just matched it all up as best I could, and that's really all it comes down to. So I mean, there's not much skill that's required other than patience, really, in putting together the scene. So for this tutorial, what we're going to be focusing on is the lighting and the materials, because that's what I'm sure a lot of you are most interested in. So go ahead and download the starting.blend file, and we can go ahead and get into it. So normally with a scene like this, I'd say do the materials first, and then you can focus on the lighting, because you might want to adjust the lighting afterwards so that you've got it the materials working and whatever else. But if you don't have a light to start with, then you're not going to be able to see the materials and how they look. So we're going to do the lighting first. So what we're going to do is start with a plane. Now this is going to be the area light. So this is going to be the light coming in from outside through these window pane here into the scene. So to do this, I'm going to use a rectangular shape, just like this. Something about that, and that is going to be the light that casts it onto the scene. Now, if you looked at the original file here, you'll see that the light near the top of it, that's more brighter than the light down the bottom, and it's casting it across. You can see you've got the shadows coming down at kind of like that angle, so there is lighting. Most of the light is coming from the top, but there is lighting also coming from the bottom as well. So to do that, what we're going to do is just rotate this plane like that. And we're also going to make it face towards the wall, like so. So that way you've got like really strong lighting coming down, hitting that wall down there, but you've also got a little bit coming down from the bottom as well. So just like that. I might just move it over just slightly as well. Make sure that it's out of frame, of course, and might increase the size just slightly. like so. So once you've got that in place, to make it a lamp, what you need to do is go to the material panel right here. Oh, by the way, of course, for your scene, make sure that you've got cycles turned on. And if you don't see cycles there, then you might have to go through the add-on menus, but I'm pretty sure you've all got cycles. Anyway, just click that. So yeah, just go to the materials, click on new, and then from the surface type, you want to go ahead and change that to emission. So if you now change this this viewport shading to rendered, you will see that the plane there is now acting as a lamp. Now currently that lamp is looking very weak indeed. So we're going to go ahead and bump that up by 50, like that. It's just going to blind the entire scene. But it's necessary, and it looks extremely, like, way too bright at the moment because, of course, all the materials are white. So that's part of that. So we're going to go ahead and just change the light color to just slightly be a little bit yellow, just like that. And we can go ahead and move the lighting around a little bit as we get towards the end, but it's looking fine so far. Now, before I continue, you'll notice that as we're moving around here, this is taking a while to update. So as you're, working in Blender, it can be annoying to have it continually update like that because it slows you down, and it just gets a little bit annoying after a while. And you're always, constantly having to pause it whilst you model something or whatever else. So what I've found is actually better is to go through here, and where in the render settings underneath integrator, if you change it to be direct light, and then just change the bounces from 8 all the way to 1, then you'll find that you get the lighting, but it works a lot quicker. So you can see how quickly it's updating here. And then also, if you want to go even further, you can change the preview samples to be 5, and that way you can see that it renders it really, really quickly. So that way you can, as you're adding materials and whatever else, Blender's not constantly slowing you down by having to spend ages trying to get the samples so that it looks good. So this is just, whilst you're working with it, I recommend putting it into direct light mode. And essentially what that does is it just changes all these light paths to be, 0 and 1 and whatever else, and just refreshes it a lot quicker. And then once you do the final one, you'll put it into full global illumination mode. And I think that was pretty much all there was for that. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get into the materials. So I'll just set this to 3D view. I'll move this across. And the one that we're going to start with is this one right here. So this is the brick wall that is being used for all of these walls here. So I've just used the object that they're all sharing the same object data, all 4 of these walls right here. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to UV unwrap it. Now, UV unwrapping something like this might be a little bit difficult because we've got a beveled edge there. And, if we were to just go like this, let's just put it into UV mode for starters. It's going to be a little bit crowded in this tutorial, by the way, guys, because, of course, we've got a lot of windows going on and whatever else. I'm trying to fit it all on here as best I can. Anyway, so if we just went like this and then hit unwrap, you can see you've got kind of crooked. It's not really matched perfectly. It looks kind of dodgy, and you can't really go project from view because, then you get that weird view. But one that I found, and I've started using it a lot recently, is to use the follow active quads. And then this little thing will pop up, and then just choose edge length mode like that, and then click OK. And, oh, that's weird. It's gone from that angle. Let's try this one. Follow active quads. That is bizarre. Let's try that from the top. Okay, there we go. Now it's actually finally worked. And what that's going to do is it's going to use, you can see that, it doesn't look like much now, but we can now rotate this and scale it as we want, like this. But you can see that the distance between, where the wall, like that length across there and that length across there, is exactly matching what the object is. So that's important. That's why we use that method. And that's just very quickly unwrap that for us. And it's looking good. So I'm just scaling it upwards, just like this. And now I've got a nice UV unwrapped wall. So for the material for this, what we're going to do is give it a diffuse material. We don't want any gloss on the brick wall there, because if you have a look at our reference image here, you can see that the wall isn't shiny at all. Maybe possibly a tiny incy-wincy bit, but it doesn't matter. It's not going to be visible. So we're just going to leave it as diffuse. And then where it says color here, we're going to click that little box to the side of it, and we're going to choose image texture. Now you can see the underneath this video. All the links where I've got these textures, they're all from cgtextures.com. Unfortunately, I can't pack them in the Blender files because it's against the copyrights. So you're going to have to go ahead and download those images from the website yourself. And yeah, so anyway, this image we're going to use is Brick Old Sharp 0137. So go ahead and add that in. This is a seamless texture. And you can see that when we've done that, just instantly over here, you've got the image, you've got the brick wall now displaying that, that texture nicely. And if you wanted to, you can adjust, you know, if you increase the size of this UV map, because it's a seamless brick texture, you know, you can just very quickly scale that up, and then that's going to make those bricks smaller and smaller. And then if you want bigger bricks, then of course you just scale it down, and then you've got bigger bricks like so. But I found just leaving it as something like that, yeah, that produced some fairly nice looking results there. And one other thing you want to do as well is just on this middle line here, because that's going to be the edge of the brick wall. Generally when they build something, they try to make it so that you don't have, you know, one little sliver of a brick like this right here, because that would just be silly, adding like a tiny little brick like that to the side there. So generally they try and make it so that you've got whole bricks on the edge. Now, unfortunately, you can't, like, there's no straight line for these bricks. Like, they're all just at odds and ends and whatever else. So it's kind of hard to match it up and find a place where it looks good. But just do your best. I think that looks okay. I mean, you've got one there. It's kind of unavoidable, but it's just something to keep in mind. If you want to go for realism, you know, with the tiling on the floor and whatever else, try and make it so that the tiles match, and it's, you know, you're not using like half a tile or something for an entire floor, because builders don't really do that. At least the good ones anyway. So one thing to note with this is that the brick wall is looking quite yellow, and I don't like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to split this window here. Again, as I said, it's going to be quite crowded in this tutorial, so I'm just trying to move it around as best I can. So this is the nodes right here. That's how Cycles actually does everything. It uses these nodes. It's automatically added these for us. It's got the image texture going into a diffuse shader, and it's now putting it into the surface. So it's automatically added that just by what we've put in the materials over here on the right. So you can see that if I change this to you know, the mapping, by default it automatically maps things to UV for Cycles, but you know, I can just click UV anyway. And you can see that it's added a texture coordinate thing there. You can make it generated, and you can see it's screwed up our texture over there. Anyway, that's nodes for you. So yeah, I want to get rid of that ugly kind of yellowy tinge to it. So what I'm going to do is add in a saturation, a hue and saturation node. And what I can do is just turn down the saturation of that to be about a 0.8. So it's still got a little bit of color there. And then I'm going to make the hue. You can see that you can change the hue, and that's just going to completely color those bricks for you, just like that. But if I make this a 0.42, I found was okay. It gives it a kind of a creamier, orangey type color that I just found worked a little bit better with the scene, because you know, you've got the nice, you know, red orangey wood there, and yeah, just having that ugly greeny yellowy color just looked a little bit wrong. So having it like that is okay. Maybe that's a little bit too orange perhaps. Yeah, something like that. Just a kind of a neutrally orange. Yeah, anyway. So so that's pretty fine. You can see that you've got a whole brick on the bottom there. That's good. You haven't got like half a brick, so that's important as well. Just match it up as best as you can, guys. So that's the bricks done. Now we might as well get into the floor. So let's just maximize this so we can actually see what we're doing. So the floor is quite long, and so we're going to be UV unwrapping this. Now, the best way that I found to UV unwrap something like this, because if you just go, you know, click U, unwrap, something like this, then you're going to get this shape right here. And that's very, well, it's pointless, you know, because if you added like a brick texture here, it's just going to be stretched across, because that does not match the actual dimensions of the plane like that. So the best way to do it is to use U and then select project from view, and then you get this nice, if you just scale that upwards, you get this nice you know, exact copy of whatever the plane is right there. So for the texture, what we're going to be using is, again, one off CG textures. Oh yeah, I suppose I should just do the shader first, of course. We're going to be using a mix shader because the floor needs to be slightly glossy and then slightly diffuse as well. So for the mix shader, the top one we're going to use diffuse, bottom one we're going to use glossy. Now you only add the texture to the diffuse shader, do not add it to the glossy or else that colors the reflection, which is something you don't want to do unless you're using metal. For the diffuse, make sure that you select image texture. And the image is, what is it called? Marble Tiles Wall 0001. Go ahead and add that in. And then once you do that, now if you go to the UV image edge, if you go into edit mode like that, you can see that it's automatically added that image in for us. It's changed the UV coordinates again for us. So just make sure that you click project from view again. Then we're just going to scale that upwards. So something like that. And again, it's the same thing. You know, if you want smaller size tiles, then just scale the size of that UV up. So something like that, I think, should be fine. Okay, and again, this is what I was talking about before. You want to make sure that those tiles match up because you don't want half a tile going down the hallway. So I'm just going to move this down slightly, move it up slightly. Oh, this is a little bit finicky. I did not expect it to be this difficult. Yeah, it's kind of hard to try and see where the UV map would actually be. Okay, so there we go. Now we've got it in line there, and now you want to make sure that that is also in line as well. So it's, yeah, I could try and move it across, I guess, a little bit. It's just, again, it doesn't take any skill. It just takes patience. And patience is half the battle. Yeah, I mean, that's going to do. I mean, it's not perfect because, again, you're going to have half a tile going down there. So you want to scale it up and whatever else. But I think that's fine. Just, I'm sure you guys can get the gist of what I mean. Now, you want to add a bump map to this because... actually, first, we'll just talk about the shader a little bit more, of course. Because this is a mix shader, if you make this this factor amount here is a blending between the diffuse and the gloss. So if you made this all 100%, 1, it's going to use 100% of the gloss, and if you make it 0, it's going to use 100% of the diffuse. So you want a blend of the two. So if you make this factor amount somewhere around about a 0.3 or something like that, then it's going to get a nice kind of blend between the gloss and the diffuse, and then you can change the roughness of the shadow, of the reflection, sorry. So if you make that 0, it's going to be a 1-to-1, mirror type reflection. So just go for, I don't know, 0.05 like that, and it's going to give you a nice kind of soft-ish looking reflection, which is sort of what we want. Yeah, looks good. Okay, cool. So we've got the floor. For the bump map, of course. Okay, so to add a bump map, if you haven't done it before with cycles, it's a little bit, what would you call it? A little bit awkward. It's not what you would expect. Basically, what you need to do is add a mix node. And, you can see that over here, this is the final node where it puts everything. So essentially, you need to put something into the displacement right here. But you can't just connect it to the image texture because you can see that it's just giving you a 100% massive bump texture, bump amount. What am I talking about? Normal amount? What's it called? Anyway, it's just 100% bump, which you don't want. You want it to be less than that. But in order to do that, what you need to do is to put it through a mix node like this. You put it into the bottom input of that mix node down there, change the type to multiply, and then you take the output from that and put it into the displacement. And now the more that you make that factor amount there, that's the more bump you get, and then down there is the less bump you get. Now, we don't want there to be, this bump, like you can see all of, the texture of that marbled floor is adding, that reflective, it's adding bump map to that texture, which we don't actually want. Instead, what we're going to use is a special bump map that came with the texture, which is kind of hard to find, so it only really works if you've got this. So I'm going to go ahead here and add a new, where is it? Input, texture, image texture. And this is going to be this one right here. So it is essentially that texture right there, but it has been edited. So you've got just a black and white nice texture just for the bump map. So I can go ahead and add that in here, and then I'm going to take the output from that and then use it in that multiply node there. And now you can see you've got a nice perfect bump map just for that, just for those tiles there. And as you can see, it looks absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to make this factor amount here. Let's see, let's have a look. You don't want to go overboard, but you want it to be looking good. So I don't know, about a 0.15. You might want to go more or less. You're going to have a better idea of it once we get the rest of the hallway done as well. But for now, I think that is okay. And actually, speaking of the rest of the hallway, we might as well go ahead and talk about at the end of the hallway here, we have a window. Okay, so this window right here. So let me just hide that so you can see it. Okay, so you've just got, you know, a basic cutaway plane there, and then through it you've got an emitter plane shining through that. And that is, of course, to, let me just, it's hard to use the keyboard because I went snowboarding last week and I fractured my thumb. So I've got this cast on it. So whenever I press Alt or Control, it's really, really awkward for me. Anyway, the reference image, you can see you've got the window showing through there in the background. So our finished image, that's what that plane is going to be there. And the reason you have that is so that it looks very warm and welcoming. So it kind of guides you through the image. Like you want to go through those doors to where it is because it's nice and warm. The colors are nice in there. And that's the point of having that window at the back there. At least compositionally, that's why that works. So, and you can see it's also making nice reflections across the ground there. So that's why we're having it at the back there. Whoop, that's the finished scene. Yeah, so we're going to make that a window. So I'm just selecting that there, making it new texture type, material type, set that to emitter. And let's go ahead and make that window, let's try 10. And we'll make it slightly warm as well, slightly yellowish like so. And I think that should be okay, yeah. Okay, so now you can see the reflections coming off the floor there, and you can sort of get a better idea for how the scene is going to look. And again, that hallway down there isn't going to look that black at the moment. It looks like that because we've only got it on direct lighting mode. Once you get all the bounce lighting in there, everything's going to look fine and dandy. Anyway, just as a bit of a break from the materials, let's go ahead, from the complex materials, we're going to go ahead and just texture these the black paint. Okay, so this is quite simple. Again, just having a look at the reference image here, you can see that you've got black paint across these door frames here, and it's the same, I'm guessing, the exact same shade of black paint. You'd hope it would be. You didn't get a separate painter in with a different type of paint. To paint this. So we can just use the exact same material on all these poles, on this beam here, and on these doors. And then also on the furniture down there, you can probably get away with using the same texture there. The same material there as well. So, so let's go ahead and do that. Oh, also on this little door frame bit at the top there, we can use that same one as well. So for this material, what we're going to do is use, again, a mix shader, because whenever you want a glossy material, you use a mix shader. I can't really think of any scenario really where you use just a pure glossy shader, because when you do that, you get a 100% reflective material, which is very, very rare that you want that unless it's a mirror or a chrome object. So we're using mix shader, diffuse at the top, glossy at the bottom. Now the color of this diffuse, that's going to be the color of the material, of course, and we're just going to make that a nice darkish color like so. And just so that we can see it, before we adjust any more of the materials, I'm going to make it apply to all of the objects that need it, so that we can then see how it looks with the rest of the scene. So let's just make the, you can see down here in the settings, by the way, you've got the viewport color. That's going to help you identify it in the viewport. So I'm just going to make this the same color as the material like that. It's now black. It's easy to see which objects have that material. I'm just going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to select all of the objects that need that material. So not the glass there, that pole there, not that beam, whatever. Okay, just make sure we've got everything. Yeah, that one there as well. Oh, and the furniture, we might as well do that part as well. Just select that, and the little tiny chair. I don't know why that chair is so small. I mean, I thought it was ridiculous for the reference image, but apparently it's real. Make sure that you select that last material right there. Then we're going to hit Control L and then select materials. And you can see that it's now applied that same material to all of those objects right there. So now over here, there we go. Now it's refreshed. Has it applied it to that? Oh, the beam, of course, the beam. Yes. Materials. There we go. Oh, no, I applied it to the wood. Mistake. Select the beam. That one. There we go. Hit Control L, materials. And again, you might want to just refresh it. There we go. Okay, so for the materials for this, we're going to go ahead and turn down that glossy amount to be somewhere around about 0.2 or something like that. You just want to see how it looks on that door frame right there, because that's where it's going to be viewed mostly. And we might turn up the softness of that reflection. So it's something like that, I think. And you might make the reflection come through just a little bit more, perhaps. See how it looks on this furniture right there. Maybe that's a bit too much. Anyway, it's just supposed to look like a nice kind of softish type, yeah, texture. I mean, material, whatever. Anyway, that's looking pretty good so far. So the next one is, let's go ahead and do that glass at the top there. So the glass is like one of the easiest things to do now in Cycles. New material from the type, we're just going to select glass. And we can change the, if you want it to be more clear looking glass, just turn that color there to be 100% white like that. That's going to make the glass just a little bit more clear. Now the other big one is these door frames, okay? So for the door frames, looking at the reference image here, it's a nice dark reddish type woody texture. So for that, just go ahead, bring this back. I'm not going to show you how to UV unwrap it because there are so many different little wood objects in the scene, and it's very, very basic. I mean, it's just UV unwrapping a cube. It's very, very simple, and I've just stretched it out so that it fits basically one wooden plank. So it's looking, like that. So, I mean, there's a whole number of tutorials out there on UV unwrapping cubes. If you want to go and check them out, if you don't know how to do that, that's it's up to you. Anyway, so they've all got the exact same sort of UV unwrapping. And for this material, we're going to go ahead and again make it a mixed shader because we want it to be slightly glossy and slightly diffuse as well. I'm just going to get a drink, excuse me. Excuse me, losing my voice. All right, so for the image texture, we're going to go ahead and use Woodfine 0039. This was a texture that I went through a whole number of different ones before I found this one. I just found that it had a nice-ish type look to it. A lot of the other wood, you've got to be careful with wood textures because generally they look quite plain. So you want to find one that has a little bit of detail to it so that you can actually see it in the final render. So I mean, even this one looks quite plain as well, but it's not too bad, I guess. So you can see how this matches with the UV unwrapping that we've already done for all those objects there. So again, I'm just going to make the viewport color. Just going to make it this color right here. So now if I just go through and I select all of the wooden objects. So let's collect that one, middle one, that one there, the door frame. Select that, hit Control L, materials. Oh, I accidentally made the ground. It should. Okay, let's just deselect the ground. Okay, Control L, material. Okay, now it's there. This one right here, so that little door frame there, the top part railing of this balcony here as well. I'm just going to select that wooden part right there. Again, they've all been UV unwrapped, so we can just use the exact same image and it should be working absolutely fine. Let's just have a look at it through here. Yeah, you can see that I've got the door frame. They all use the exact same object data. So you do that by selecting one object, selecting them all, then hitting Control L and selecting object data. So now when you edit one, all the others copy it as well. So that's why if I added the material to just one of those, that it was able to copy it across all the others. So the same thing on that door frame there in the background. And, oh, one little part there at the bottom as well. Let's just do that. Materials. Okay, bring back our little preview rendering over here. There you go. The wood is now looking better, at least. Okay, cool. And we're coming towards the end of it right now. We're almost there. It gets a little bit tedious just going around, just setting up materials, but I'm sure this is what you guys are interested in, is the materials, because that's what is realism, really. It's getting that shader looking good. So that's why we're going through and doing all this. So this wooden, again, having a look at the reference image, you can see that it's just a wooden plank across there. Now this is again one of those textures that I went through and had to experiment with a whole number of different ones before I found something that worked. Again, we're just going to use diffuse, glossy, like this. The image texture that I ended up using was this one right here, wooden planks. So the image texture is actually quite, yeah, it looks like kind of like quite an old wooden type look, but I needed something with a little bit of interesting texture to it, because all the other ones look very flat from this angle of where the camera is. All the planks look quite flat and boring, so I wanted to make sure that I got one that was at least interesting. So again, you want to make sure that you scale this to fit, you know, your image that you're using. So I found, if you can just imagine that this plane right here is then using you know, the exact number of planks that are going to be across here like that. So that's kind of how you can judge the size of it. So that's why we're using that. Now again, we just want to change the diffuse shader so it's mostly, let's just switch this to rendered so we can see how it looks. Okay, so you don't want, yeah, you can see here that you're getting a lot of reflection off that little, yeah, what is it, plank? No, what is it, pole, whatever you want to call it. So just going to set the roughness of that reflection up, and then the factor to be a 0.05, because you do want a little bit of reflection coming off that edge there, because as you can see in the reference image, you've got some of that shine coming along the edge of that wooden plank there. So we do want a little bit of shine across there, but that should be fine. And again, I'm just going to make the viewport color just this nice color right there, just so we can identify it in the viewport. And yeah, that underside there's going to be more lighting that's going to hit that, because currently, again, we're just using the direct lighting, so it's not much is getting there, but it will be more in the final render. Now, for this little object here in the background, if I made this the same material as that black paint, because again, you want that in the reference image, that is solid black there, you're not really seeing any texture or anything else. Yeah, you can see that it's a little bit weak. It's reflecting a little bit too much, and I actually wanted it to be solid black. So to do that, I'm actually just going to cheat, and I'm just going to use a material, a shader just called Holdout. And what that's going to do is just make that, oh no, what have I done? Okay, I just accidentally made the plank that material. Let's just try that again. Select this one here. Going to use Holdout. Okay, now that's just going to make that solid black. So that's good for kind of blotting out the scene, and we're going to get to that later on as well. If you just want something to be solid black, just set it to Holdout, and that's going to look well. Okay, so now the rest of it is looking fairly good. There's one final thing up here as well for this this window here. So if you have a look at the original right here, you can see that it's got this nice texture. It's got a window there, and it's got kind of a curtain behind it, which has got this nice texture coming down there. And originally I actually modeled it so that there was a glass plane, and then behind that there was another plane which the texture was applied to. But I find that currently in Blender, like you can see it a little bit up here as well. If we just focus on this glass here, let's just zoom in here. You can see that it doesn't really at the moment do glass very well. Like it's very, very noisy, the glass. So whenever I had that up there on that plane, it just looked very, very noisy. So by physically modeling things so that you actually had a plane of glass and then something behind it, it was just unnecessary. And I found that it was actually better to cheat by actually just making it a mix shader by using, again, diffuse and glossy like before. And the image texture that I'm going to use is one that is very odd, very bizarre, but it works perfectly. And that is this plastic texture. And it is actually just like a close-up of some plastic that's been stretched. And strangely enough, it actually works really, really well for this curtain type look. So again, I'm just going to go to front view. I'm just going to hit U, then select project from view. Rotate that by 90 degrees. Scale that up. Move that across, just like that. And there we go. And I'm just going to turn the factor amount of that down to maybe 0.3. And then I'm going to make the roughness of that a absolute 0, because we want it to mimic the reflection, you know, the look of a real window, but also you know, have a little bit of that, you know, the curtain sort of peeking through. So if I just make that more and more like that, it's just going to be solid mirror. Again, this doesn't look very good at the moment because we've got it in direct light mode. If I just switch this to full global illumination, it's going to take a little bit longer, but you can see that it's going to have how it looks, at least in the final sort of look. So I just can't remember the exact settings. Let me just check, actually. Shouldn't be doing this, but I'm just going to switch to my finished one over here. I can't remember the values. Okay, so I used a 0.3. So let's just set that to 0.3 like that. And there we go. It's kind of faked that reflection. I'm just going to switch this back to direct light so it's not taking forever. Okay, cool. And I think we are coming to the end of it. We're almost there. We've got a, not a plane, a light in the background here, just a lamp. So just sitting there, way in the background. And I'm going to make that a solid emitter as well. Just make that emission. I'm going to make it quite a warm looking lamp. And this is going to be, I don't know, let's go 20 perhaps. Let's see how that looks. It could look okay. And yeah. Oh, one other thing as well. Some of you might be wondering why there isn't actually any glass on those window panes right there. And again, that's coming back to what I said before, because when I had actual physical glass in these windows here, when the light would pass through it, everything would just be noisy in the scene. And I'm sure this is going to be sped up for future, you know, cycles, releases, or improvements or whatever. But at the moment, yeah, glass is really, really noisy. So it was unnecessary. And I found that just by removing it, it wasn't even really that noticeable anyway. And it just makes the whole scene look a lot clearer. Again, it's going to be cleaned up in the future, I'm sure. But at the moment, I just decided not to use that. Now, for the lighting as well, we're not done with the lighting. What I want there to be, because we've, you know, at the moment we've got a plane from the side here, which is casting that nice warm light in through the side. But I also want there to be the look of some skylighting, okay? So just a little bit of a blue tinge coming in from outside. So I'm going to the world panel here, and I'm going to change the color from black, and I'm going to make it a slightly bluish color, like so. So you can see on the back here, where we haven't got any light actually hitting it, you can see that it's now been slightly colored to a blue color like that. And you can turn that up or down, depending on your taste. Now the problem when you do that is that now all the objects have a slight blue tinge to it. So this is where we actually need to do some blot out modeling. Now that is kind of a impromptu title I've just used, but essentially what we're doing is just modeling out the areas where we want to make, even though this part of the scene, this entire part over here, is not visible to the camera, we need to model it so that the light, the world lighting, that blue sky lighting, is not just shining down, you know, directly from above. We don't want that. So we're going to have to actually model a ceiling and whatever else. So to do that, what we're going to do is, I'm just going to click on this right here. I'm just going to add a cube, okay? I'm just going to scale this up. This is going to be very rough. It's not going to look very good. Just needs to fit that area right there. Scale that up some more. Scale it down. Scale it inwards like so. Okay. And, oh, actually, you know what? I might as well just grab this and just drag it across, because we need to do the same for the camera there, so might as well just save some time and move that across to there. Okay, now actually through this door on the left-hand side, why am I using that? I can just use here. Yeah, on the left-hand side here, where you've got, you know, the light near where the chairs and that, we actually want there to be light coming through there, like skylighting. Because if you have a look at the original reference image, you've got a little bit of light coming there from the side. So I'm just going to, whoop, I've grabbed the wrong scene again. I'm just going to grab here, I'm just going to add a loop cut right there. Yeah, there. Another loop cut here. I'm just going to knock out this window. Right there, select faces, and I might as well do the same along the bottom here. And again, here as well. Going to delete that as well, right there. And, oh, actually, I think that's too close to the scene. Let's just move that out a little bit. scale that up. So it was only kind of a rough lighting that we used first. And I want this to actually be just come across a little bit more because we want there to be a shadow that's kind of cast across that marble floor. So let's just take a look how this looks. Oh, okay, so we've got a part of this is just cutting into the doorway there, which we don't want at all. So let's just make a cut right here. And let's just delete. Not the face. What did I select? Let's go edge. There we go. Okay, so now we've got it in the right place. So we've got, yeah, we want there to be a shadow just across the marbled floor there. So just want to drag this across until we can see that shadow. You can see it kind of coming through a little bit better there. It's going to be better with the final render, of course, once we get some bounce lighting and whatever else. And also, I think, yeah, at the top here, let's just delete that edge. And what is that reflecting into that window? There's not a lot there, is there? Okay, well, let's just cut a hole so that you've got something coming through to reflect into the window as well. I'm just kind of going as I go here. You know, you can sort of plan this stuff, or you can just roll with it, which is my favorite method. If you guys don't mind too much. Oh, actually, I'll put that one back. Okay, so I think that just about does it. I think I'm going to scale up that light plane there. Again, this is where you can sort of get into the details of the lighting. Now that we're coming to the end of it, you can add more or less. You can rotate it a little bit more. Now, if you looked at the original reference image, again, you'd notice that, you know, the lighting is quite coming in really harsh from the side, like kind of hugging the wall, and it's kind of cutting across so that that wooden door there isn't receiving very much light. And you want there to be kind of a nice texture kind of going across the bricks there, so that can kind of play into that as well. Actually, I don't think we actually added a bump map to the bricks as well. That's pretty shoddy. Okay, we could probably go ahead and do that, I suppose. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. That's the final thing I think we're going to have to do, and then we can get into the post-production. So where are these nodes? Let's just bring these up. Now you can use, you know, like a normal map. You can like modify it, or you can just use the image, you know, the original image texture and use that for the bump map. I find that, you know, if you use Crazy Bump or something like that, which is another program which will generate normal maps and stuff for you, that's good. But sometimes I find it's just a bit of a waste of time. So it doesn't add too much of a difference. We're just going to go ahead and use that same image texture in here. I'm going to set this to multiply, just like we did before, and then drag that to the displacement. And you can see, there we go. Now we've actually got some shadows coming from the light that's coming in from the side there, and you don't want to go overboard. Let's try a 0.12 like that. Just some slight bump map on that edge there, like so. And that just about does that. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, so now let's go ahead. Let's switch it to full global illumination mode. Let's just do that right now. Okay, now you're going to want to go ahead and save this whilst you've got it now. Oh, and also while we're on the topic, let's go ahead and let's add some depth of field. Because now Cycles does depth of field realistically, or Blender does, yeah, using Cycles. It does it realistically. You don't have to do it in the compositor anymore, faking and whatever else. You can do it right here. So you've got the depth of field value right here. And this functions just the same way. You use this distance here to make that little yellow cursor there. You turn that yellow cursor on by selecting limits, and you make that, yeah, just match wherever you want it to. So I want it to be on that wall right there, so I'm setting that to about there, and then you set the aperture to be however much depth of field you want. So if I just show you right now, if I just set this to rendered like this, and if I set this to be, let's say 0.3, everything, you can see that now everything else is out of focus. Like this wall is almost completely gone. The background there is going all foggy, and just that wall there is in focus. So obviously that is way, way, way too much. So let's turn that down to be about a 0.01, and you'll see that the wall here just slightly looks out of focus, and it's barely out of focus in the background as well. Oh, and also now we've got some bounce lighting. We can actually see that the wall in the background doesn't have the wooden texture applied So we can go ahead and just do that now very quickly. Control L, materials. There we go. Now it's got the right material. That's looking good. You can see Cycles is just really brilliant. You get some very realistic looking results with not really much work. You can see that we did it pretty much, what's that, 44 minutes or something? That's pretty good. In Blender it would take absolutely forever. So yeah, so we can go ahead. If I just give this a render now, I'm hoping that it doesn't crash. Let's just try it. Oh, Blender crashed. What do you know? Let's just bring it up again. I saved it, luckily. That's why you save things. Okay. Let's just try this again. Oh, I'll just set this to 50%. That might have been why it carked it. So make sure it's on full global illumination mode. Oh, there was one other thing as well. The camera as well. You've got camera presets here. So this is if you want to replicate the real look of a camera. You can go ahead and use one of these presets. Now, for mine, I use Canon 550D. That is because that's pretty much the only camera I know on there, because that's my camera, the Canon 550D, and it uses the exact sensor settings from the camera, so it's really, really good. That'll just, I don't know the ins and outs of how that works and, you know, what sort of improvements or changes you're going to see by using one of those things. I know it's affecting the sensor there, but I'm not really a photographer, so I can't tell you really what the sensor does. I'm sure other people in the comments will be able to fill you in if you want to check that out. Where's it gone? Gosh, it's just disappeared. Hang on, slide it in from the sideway. Here we go. It's coming in, a little bit more. Yeah, when it's rendering, because it's using, oh, by the way, I should have said that before as well. I'm using the GPU rendering setting from the top here in the render panel. I'm using GPU, not CPU. My graphics card is a GTX 560, so it renders it quite well. Anyway, I'm going to pause that right there, but you can see that it's cleared it up quite nicely, and the lighting is looking fairly decent. You can go into a little bit more detail, making sure you get that shadow coming across the floor, you know, looking a little bit better or whatever else. But that's the basics of it, guys. That's it. If you want to check out the finished result for, you know, all the settings that I've got here. By the way, the flowers, I can't include this in the original blend file, unfortunately, because they're models that I bought off cgaccess.com, so unfortunately I can't put them in there. And also the textures as well, it's annoying, but I can't pack them in the finished file either, because I can't pack textures that I don't own myself, so unfortunately they can't put them in there. But the links are all below this video if you want to download the textures. You can see all the, you know, the setups that I use for my scene. Go ahead and download that and you should be fine. Now, getting into the actual post-processing, okay? So let's just go ahead. I'm going to be using Photoshop here, but again, you're welcome to use GIMP if you like. The reason I'm using Photoshop is purely for the fact, well, I actually tried. I really did try. I tried to use GIMP to actually do this step, but using a lens flare with GIMP, you can't change the size of the lens flare, so it's annoying. I couldn't do it, so I just had to cark it. I had enough of it. So this is the reference image that we're using, okay? And you can see that on that lamp in the background there, you've got a little bit of a lens flare coming off it. Also, the doorway is making it kind of glowing coming from the doorway. That's the kind of effect we want to get. We also want to color correct it so that it looks a little bit nicer, looks a little bit cooler. So we're going to be doing that now. So again, I'm using Photoshop. Sorry if you don't have Photoshop, but again, there's a whole number of different free image editors out there. Actually, I don't know about a number of them. I know GIMP. That's what I know about. But I'm sure you can do these sorts of steps in GIMP. So first thing I'm going to do is, let's just have a look at the layer panel here. I'm going to hit Control J. That's just going to duplicate that layer like that. And I'm just going to go to the, oh, I should probably just drag this down so you can actually see what I'm clicking on. That would probably help you, I think. And actually, no, it's underneath the layers here. I'm going to select Effects, and I'm going to choose, no, I'm going to choose Curves. Okay, let's go ahead and choose Curves. And this is not big enough, is it? Let's just close this. No, open it. How do I get rid of this? Get out of here. Go on, scram, minimize. There we go. Bring back the layers. Okay, we're getting somewhere. It's very hard to work on a really small screen. I've made it 720p, so it's easy for you to follow. Anyway, so I want to just decrease the contrast of it for starters. Okay, so it's just making everything just a little bit darker, like so. And I'm just going to increase, make these dark values. I'm going to make them look solid blue, like that. bump it up even more, and then drag it down. So that means that the darker areas of the photo are going to have a blue tinge to it, and then everything else should have an almost the same or almost yellowy type tinge. Essentially what we've got going here at the moment. Okay, don't want to be too crass, not too offensive. Okay, that's all right. Oh yeah, so the reason we duplicated that layer is so we can add a lens flare. So we go to render, lens flare, and I've already clicked it in the exact right spot right there, and you got that brightness setting there, which GIMP doesn't have, and I've set that to 40%. I'm just going to click OK, and I've got a nice little lens flare coming from that lamp in the background. And to make it glow just around this window here, I'm just going to cheat. I'm just going to add a new layer here. Just use a nice white brush like this, and you can even, you know, scale it down and just add some little spots around here. This might be excessive. I'm pretty sure it is, actually. All right, and then I'm just going to turn the opacity for that right down, like so. And that's basically it, guys. You can turn that up or down. And that's just added a nice little touch to it. Just make it look a little bit more warm and welcoming. And yeah, so that is it, guys. That is the tutorial. Now, I mentioned at the start that if you wanted to find cool reference images of architecture, they're really hard to find on the internet. So I've actually gone to the trouble to find some for you, because it's a pain trying to find some good ones out there, because there's just some awful architectural images on there that just do not look good. Yeah, there's some good websites. So the first one is this one, freshhome.com. Now these guys have got some really cool, that they just like feature a whole bunch of houses, and they show you all the exteriors and the interiors, and all the photos, at least from what I've seen so far, most of them look absolutely stunning, and they would be perfect if you just want to, you know, do some practice, start with a reference image and then go from there. Again, make sure you spend some time going through a lot of images. I think I went through like possibly 300 or 400 before I decided on the one that I chose. So just find something that you like on here, freshhome.com. The web address is right there. And then you've also got this one here, fancycribs.com. That is another website. And on here, pretty much the same thing. They feature a bunch of houses. Excuse me. Just losing my breath there. I just had to get a drink. And yeah, the images look absolutely stunning. Oh, this is where I found my image. Here you go. It is this house right here. There you go. So I found this on fancycribs.com. There you go. And another one, this is on Reddit. If you go to Reddit /architecture, they have sort of a mini sub-community in there that posts a lot of cool artwork and stuff in there for architects. That's kind of like where the people hang out and they just talk about architecture stuff. So they've got, this is where I found most of the websites, is actually on here. Another one is Reddit /r/house porn, which is a weird name. But again, this is like interiors for houses as well. You're going to find a lot of cool stuff on there. And another one is freecabinporn.com, which sounds rude, but no, there's nothing rude about it. This is just for cabins. And they've got some absolutely stunning photos of cabins. So if you're wanting to create a cabin, highly recommend this website. It's a beautiful website as well. They just feature some just excellent remote, you know, that's cool, some isolated looking cabins out in the wilderness. So if you're into that kind of stuff, by all means check that out. That's freecabinporn.com. That's it from me, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned a few things from it. And of course, I'm very interested to see what you created from it. So if you go out there and you find a cool reference image and you make something from it, by all means, post it in the comments section below. I like checking out what you guys do. It's always fun to, to see what you guys are making. So please do that. And that's it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. See you next time.